The Great Hall on Zentari Prime had never seen such chaos. Ambassador Kethler stood at the center of the massive chamber while hundreds of alien voices spoke at once. His blue scales were dull with exhaustion, and his forearms shook as he held up the data pad containing the latest reports. The holographic display above him showed 12 star systems that no longer existed. The Devourers have taken Kepler 442, Kethler announced, his voice barely audible over the noise. That makes 12 systems in 3 months. 40 billion lives gone. The chamber fell silent. Even the most aggressive species in the Galactic Council had nothing to say to that number. Counselor Vex Star of the Warrior Calthic race slammed his massive fist on his seat. Our best fleets cannot stop them. They adapt to everything we throw at them. Plasma weapons, ion cannons, antimatter. Bombs, nothing works for more than a few battles. They learn, whispered Elder Nymira of the crystalline Nexari. Each weapon we use becomes useless after they encounter it twice. They absorb our technology and make themselves stronger. Kethler activated another hologram. The image showed a world that had once been green and blue, covered in cities and farmland. Now it was brown and lifeless, stripped of every living thing. This was my own world 6 months ago. The Devourers came in ships that looked like living tissue. They landed and began consuming everything. Plants, animals, people, even the bacteria in the soil. They turned it all into gray paste and fed it to their machines. The Galactic Council had faced threats before. Pirates, rogue AI systems, even civil wars between member species. But nothing like this. The Devourers didn't want territory or resources in the normal sense. They wanted to consume all organic life and convert it into more of themselves. They were a plague that grew stronger with every world they destroyed. We must try the Deep Space Transmission Array, suggested Counselor Zephan of the Peaceful. Torani, send our plea to every corner of the galaxy. Perhaps there are species beyond our knowledge who can help. We have already done this, Kethler replied. The array has been broadcasting for 2 months. We have sent our message to 10,000 star systems. We offer all our technology, all our knowledge, everything we have built over millions of years. We just want to survive. Meanwhile, 40,000 light years away, Captain Jake Morrison was having the worst day of his career. The exploration vessel New Horizon had been mapping unknown sectors for 6 months and had found nothing but empty space and dead rocks. The crew was getting restless, and supplies were running low. Jake was considering turning back to Earth when the communications officer called out. "Captain, I'm getting something strange on the long-range array," said Lieutenant Betty Clark, her fingers dancing over the control panel. "It's not from Earth Command. The signal is coming from outside our galaxy." Jake walked over to her station. "What kind of signal?" "It's a broadcast on multiple frequencies. Someone is transmitting in what looks like broken English, but the grammar is all wrong. And Captain, the power output needed to send this signal across intergalactic space would be enormous." Jake felt his pulse quicken. Humanity had been exploring space for 200 years and had never found intelligent life. Earth's xenobiology departments existed mostly to study the possibility of alien contact, not the reality of it. "Put it on speakers." The voice that came through was clearly not human. It spoke with strange pauses, and the words seemed to be in the wrong order. "Please, anyone who receives this message, we are dying. Our worlds burn and our children are consumed. The Devourer swarm comes, and we cannot stop them. We offer everything we have built, all our science, all our history. Just help us live. Coordinates are attached to this message. Please." The bridge went completely quiet. Jake looked around at his crew and saw the same expression on every face. Wonder, fear, and excitement all mixed together. "Betty, How long would it take to get to those coordinates? At maximum warp, about 8 months, sir. But, Captain, we would need to report this to Earth Command first. Send the message to Earth. Immediately. Include everything we just heard and all the technical data about the transmission. Then plot a course for those coordinates. We're going to investigate. Betty nodded and began working. Sir, there's something else. The transmission includes what looks like star charts and biological data. I think they're showing us what they're fighting. Jake studied the data as it appeared on the main screen. The images were horrifying. Creatures that looked like a mix of machine and living tissue. Ships that seemed to grow rather than be built. And worlds stripped bare of all life. My God, what are these things? I don't know, sir. But according to these charts, they've destroyed dozens of civilizations. And the transmission says they're still spreading. Back on Earth, Admiral Lisa Kane was in a meeting about supply routes when her aide burst through the door. Admiral, you need to see this immediately. We just received a priority transmission from Captain Morrison. Lisa had been in the military for 30 years and had learned to stay calm in any situation. But as she listened to the alien transmission and read Morrison's report, she felt something she had not experienced since her first combat mission. Pure, ice-cold fear. Get me President Martinez on the secure line, she said, and call an emergency session of the Defense Council. We need every department head, every scientist, and every military commander in the solar system here within 6 hours. The president's voice was steady when he answered. Admiral, I'm assuming this is about the transmission from the New Horizon. Yes, sir. We have confirmed alien intelligence, and they're asking for military assistance against something called the Devourer Swarm. From the data they sent, this threat has already destroyed multiple civilizations. How long do we have to make a decision? Sir, according to the star charts they provided, if this swarm continues expanding at its current rate, it will reach Earth's galaxy in approximately 50 years. But that's not the real problem. The real problem is that an entire galactic civilization is begging for our help, and we might be their only hope. President Martinez was quiet for a long moment. Admiral, I want you to assemble the largest military force in human history. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon we have. If these aliens are telling the truth, we're about to face the greatest threat humanity has ever encountered. Dr. Nathan Cross had spent his entire career studying theoretical alien biology. He had written papers about what extraterrestrial life might look like, how it might behave, and how humans should interact with it. But nothing had prepared him for the data packet that came with the alien transmission. The Devourers were not a natural species. They were some kind of engineered plague designed to consume organic matter and convert it into more of themselves. Each individual drone was both a living creature and a machine, capable of rapid adaptation and evolution. They could analyze any weapon used against them and develop immunity within hours. This is impossible, Nathan muttered as he studied the biological scans. No natural evolution could produce something this efficient at destruction. Someone made these things. His assistant, Dr. Curran White, looked over his shoulder at the Chi. Data. Could they have been created as a weapon? That's what I'm afraid of. These organisms show signs of artificial genetic manipulation. Someone designed them to be the perfect predator. They consume everything organic, they adapt to any threat, and they reproduce exponentially. It's like someone took every nightmare scenario from our biological warfare research and made it real. Nathan continued studying the data through the night. The more he learned about the Devourers, the more terrified he became. But he also began to understand something else. The aliens who sent the transmission were desperate because every weapon they had tried was based on energy. Plasma beams, ion cannons, particle accelerators. all forms of directed energy that the Devourers could absorb and adapt to. But humans had developed something different during their long history of warfare. Kinetic weapons. Simple, brutal force delivered through solid projectiles. Bullets, shells, railgun slugs. Physical impact that could not be absorbed or adapted to, only blocked or avoided. For the first time in months, Nathan smiled. Humanity might actually have a chance to help these aliens. But as he prepared his report for the Defense Council, he wondered if the galaxy was ready for what humans would bring to this war. The Terra Defense Fleet emerged from the wormhole jump like hunters, stepping into an alien forest. Admiral Lisa Kane stood on the bridge of the flagship, Defiance, and watched 36 other human ships take formation around her. 6 months of preparation had led to this moment, but nothing could have prepared them for what they found in Vorthic space. Admiral, we're receiving multiple distress signals, reported Communications Officer Danny Ross. At least 15 different worlds are under attack right now. Lisa studied the tactical display. Red markers showed Devourer swarm positions, while blue dots marked surviving Vorthic colonies. The ratio was terrifying. For every defended world, there were 3 that had already gone silent. Hit me a channel to the Vorthic command ship. The alien face that appeared on screen was gaunt with exhaustion. Ambassador Kethler looked like he had not slept in weeks. Human fleet, we did not dare hope you would actually come. Our situation has grown much worse since we sent the transmission. We're here to help, Lisa replied. What's your current tactical situation? The Devourers have taken 18 more systems since our message reached you. We estimate they now control over 60% of our territory. Our remaining fleets are scattered across 12 systems, but we cannot hold much longer. Lisa nodded grimly. We need to see these Devourers in action before we commit our forces. Can you guide us to an active battle zone? Kepler 442b is under siege. No. The colony there has held out for 3 days, but their defenses are failing. If you want to observe Devourer tactics, that would be the place. Colonel Ryan Mitchell had commanded ground forces on 7 different worlds, but he had never seen anything like the drop zone on Kepler 442b. The planet's surface looked like a nightmare painting. Black organic ships covered the landscape like giant insects, and streams of gray biomechanical creatures poured from their holds. In the distance, the ruins of what had once been cities burned with sickly green flames. Jesus Christ, whispered Sergeant Ben Carter as their transport touched down. What the hell are those things? The Devourers moved like a living carpet across the battlefield. Each individual drone was roughly human-sized, but looked like someone had tried to build a person using spare machine parts and raw meat. They had multiple limbs that could change shape, sensors that glowed with unnatural light, and weapons that seemed to grow from their bodies. Remember the briefing, Ryan said over the comm system? These things adapt to energy weapons fast. We stick to kinetics only. No plasma, no lasers, no particle beams. Old-school projectiles and explosives. The first wave of Devourers reached their position within minutes. Ryan watched through his scope as the creatures analyzed the defensive positions with mechanical precision. They moved with purpose, testing angles of attack and probing for weaknesses, just like a human military unit would. Contact front, called out Lieutenant Amy Parker from her heavy weapons position. I count at least 200 hostiles approaching from the North Ridge. The Vorthic defenders had been using plasma rifles, and Ryan could see why they were losing. The Devourers absorbed the energy bolts like sponges soaking up water. Some drones actually seemed to grow larger after being hit multiple times. But when Amy opened fire with her railgun, the results were dramatically different. The tungsten slug hit the lead, Devourer at 1,200 meters per second, and punched completely through its torso. The creature dropped instantly, sparking and twitching as its biomechanical systems failed. The other drones stopped advancing and began analyzing their fallen comrade. "They're trying to figure out what happened," Ryan observed. "They've never seen kinetic weapons before." Ben Carter lobbed a fragmentation grenade into the cluster of confused devourers. The explosion sent metal shrapnel in every direction, shredding 6 more drones. The survivors scattered, clearly unable to adapt to simple explosive force. "This is unbelievable," Amy said as she continued firing. "They don't know how to deal with bullets and bombs. It's like they were designed to fight energy weapons only." The battle continued for 3 hours, and the results were one-sided in a way that shocked everyone involved. The Devourers, who had been unstoppable against Vorthic plasma weapons, died by the hundreds when faced with human kinetics. Chemical, explosives, armor-piercing rounds, and simple fragmentation devices cut through their ranks like a scythe through a wheat dot commander. Nicole Wright was having similar success in space. Her fighter squadron had been equipped with old-fashioned missiles instead of the energy weapons that most galactic civilizations used. The Devourer bioships, massive living vessels that could absorb and redirect plasma beams, had no defense against 500 pounds of high explosive delivered at high velocity. "Target destroyed," Nicole reported as another Devourer ship broke apart under missile fire. "These things are tough, but they can't adapt to getting blown up." Her wingman, Captain Pete Johnson, was almost laughing over the comm. "It's like fighting enemies who have never heard of gunpowder. They keep trying to absorb our missiles instead of shooting them down." The space battle was turning into a rout. Human fighters darted between the massive Devourer ships, launching missile after missile. The alien vessels tried to respond with bioweapons that fired concentrated energy bursts, but human ships were designed to avoid being hit rather than absorb damage. When a missile connected, the Devourer ship died. Back on the planet's surface, the Vorthic garrison commander approached Ryan's position. The alien officer's 4 eyes were wide with amazement. "Colonel Mitchell, in 3 hours you have accomplished what our forces could not achieve in 3 months. How is this possible?" Ryan reloaded his rifle and looked out at the battlefield. Dead Devourers covered the ground like fallen leaves, but no human casualties appeared on his tactical display. "Your people developed energy weapons and forgot about kinetics. These Devourers were designed to fight civilizations like yours. They can absorb and adapt any form of directed energy, but they never encountered anyone who still used bullets and bombs." "But kinetic weapons are so primitive," the Vorthic officer said. "We abandoned such crude tools thousands of years ago." "Sometimes primitive works better than advanced," Ben Carter replied, shouldering his grenade launcher. "A rock thrown hard. Enough will kill anything, no matter how evolved it is." The battle for Kepler 442b ended with complete human victory. Not a single Devourer drone survived the encounter, and their bioships fled the system after losing 2/3 of their number. The Vorthic colonists emerged from their shelters to find their world defended by creatures they had never seen before. Admiral Kane received the reports from all fronts with growing amazement. Every human unit had achieved overwhelming success against enemies that had been unstoppable just days before. The Terra Defense Fleet had not lost a single ship, while the Devourers had lost dozens of vessels and thousands of drones. "Admiral, we're receiving communications from Vorthic Command," Danny Ross reported. "They want to know if we can assist with 7 other worlds currently under attack." Lisa looked at the tactical display showing the disposition of human forces. 37 ships against an enemy that controlled 60 star systems. By any reasonable military calculation, they were vastly outnumbered. But the reports from Kepler 442b suggested that numbers might not matter in this conflict. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "We're going to split the fleet into battle groups and hit every Devourer." positioned simultaneously. It's time to show this galaxy what humans can do when someone threatens innocent lives. But even as she gave the orders, Lisa felt a growing unease. The Devourers had been designed to fight energy-based civilizations, which made them vulnerable to human kinetics. But what happened after the war was over? What would these grateful alien species think of humans once they no longer needed protection from the swarm? The Vorthik had called humans primitive for still using kinetic weapons. But primitive or not, those weapons had just saved an entire star system. Lisa wondered if the galaxy understood that they had not just called for help, they had invited predators into their midst. Predators who knew how to kill things that others couldn't even hurt. The first battle was over, but Lisa suspected that the real war was just beginning, and she was no longer sure which side would be more dangerous. When it ended, the news of humanity's victory at Kepler 442b spread across the galaxy faster than the speed of light itself. Within weeks, ambassadors from dozens of species were arriving at human fleet positions with offers of alliance, technology exchanges, and desperate pleas for protection. General Patricia Stone found herself commanding not just human forces, but a growing coalition of alien species who suddenly saw hope where there had been none. General, the Centauri delegation is offering us their quantum communication networks, reported Major Linda Brooks from the command center on Firebase Alpha. They want human protection for their core worlds in exchange. Patricia studied the holographic display showing the current tactical situation. The Devourers controlled 43 star systems, but human forces had liberated 6 worlds in the past month. Each victory brought more alien volunteers and more offers of support. What about the Calthic? They're providing industrial support and advanced manufacturing. Captain Alex Turner's task force now has Calthic-built ships equipped with human weapon systems. The combination is proving very effective. The integration of human and alien technology was happening faster than anyone had thought possible. The crystalline Nexari offered their computational power to run tactical simulations, while the Tarani provided advanced medical facilities for treating wounded soldiers. Every species contributed something, and in return, they received human military protection and training. Captain Alex Turner stood on the bridge of the hybrid vessel Determination, watching his mixed crew of humans and aliens work together with surprising efficiency. His communications officer was a Vorthik, his weapons specialist was Calthic, and his navigator was one of the crystalline Nexari. 6 months ago, none of these species had even known humans existed. Captain, we're approaching the Devourer position. At Tau Ceti, announced Lieutenant Carl Phillips from the tactical station. Long-range sensors show at least 12 bioships defending the system. Alex nodded and activated the fleet-wide communication system. All ships, this is Turner. Remember the drill. Human ships target the largest vessels with kinetic weapons. Alien vessels provide support and pick off smaller targets. Do not, repeat do not, use energy weapons against Devourer main forces. The battle for Tau Ceti lasted only 4 hours, but it demonstrated something that shocked the entire galaxy. The combined human-alien fleet didn't just defeat the Devourers, they completely annihilated them. Not a single enemy vessel escaped. And the biomechanical forces on the planet were systematically hunted down and destroyed, but it was the aftermath that worried some observers. When the Devourer threat was eliminated, the human-trained alien forces didn't return to their home worlds. Instead, they established permanent military bases in the liberated system and began conducting patrols of neighboring space. Dr. Helen Kumar had been studying the Devourer communication networks for months, and her breakthrough came at the worst possible time. She was working in her laboratory aboard the research vessel Discovery when the quantum signatures finally made sense. "My God," she whispered, staring at the data streams flowing across her screens. "They're all connected." Every devourer drone, every bioship, every swarm formation. They share a single hive mind through quantum entanglement. Her assistant, Dr. Kevin Martinez, looked up from his own work. What does that mean for our war effort? It means we've been fighting this wrong. We've been treating them like separate fleets and armies, but they're really one massive organism spread across dozens of star systems. If we could disrupt their quantum communication network, the entire swarm would collapse into individual components. Helen spent the next 3 weeks developing a quantum disruption device, working 18-hour days with almost no sleep. The theory was sound, but the practical application would require getting close enough to a major devourer concentration to deploy the weapon. It would be a suicide mission. Major Chris Thompson volunteered to lead the assault on the devourer command. Nexus. Intelligence suggested that the primary quantum communication hub was located in the Sigma Draconis system, protected by the largest concentration of bioships ever recorded. Getting close enough to deploy Helen's device would require fighting through defenses that had never been successfully penetrated. You understand this is a one-way trip, General Stone told him during the final briefing. Even if the device works, your task force won't have enough fuel or ammunition to fight your way back out. Chris looked around the briefing room at the 43 volunteers who had agreed to join the mission. Marines, pilots, and technical specialists, all willing to sacrifice their lives to end the war. General, every day this war continues, billions of people die. If we can stop that, the cost is acceptable. The assault fleet consisted of 12 ships, each loaded with enough firepower to level a small moon. They approached the Sigma Draconis system using a route that took them through 3 different nebulae to avoid detection. When they finally arrived at their target, the site was beyond anything they had imagined. The Devourer Command Nexus was not just a space station or a large ship. It was an entire moon that had been converted into a living biomechanical construct. Millions of drones swarmed around its surface like insects around a hive, while massive bioships docked at organic ports that pulsed with unnatural light. Jesus, whispered pilot Kate Rogers as she maneuvered her fighter through the outer defenses. The whole thing is alive. It's like flying into the mouth of some cosmic monster. The battle for the command nexus lasted 8 hours and cost the lives of 37 human soldiers. But Chris Thompson and his demolition team managed to reach the quantum communication core and deploy Helen's disruption device. The explosion was visible from 12 light-years away, across 43 star systems. The effect was immediate and devastating. Devourer swarms that had operated with perfect coordination for decades suddenly lost all central command. Individual drones began attacking each other. Bioships crashed into planets, and entire fleets dissolved into chaos as their hive mind collapsed. The war was over, but victory came at a price that few had anticipated. Human military forces now occupied 17 star systems, with bases on 47 different worlds. The grateful alien species had offered so much territory and so many resources that humanity had become the dominant power in the local galaxy. Almost overnight, General Stone received reports from her commanders across the region, and the pattern was troubling. Human military advisors were being integrated into alien defense forces at every level. Species that had been peaceful for millennia were building armies and fleets designed around human tactical doctrine. Mom, the Zentari are requesting human assistance with their border dispute with the Kalphik, reported Major Brooks. Both sides want our military advisors to help resolve the conflict. Patricia looked at the strategic map, showing human influence spreading like ripples across the galaxy. Green markers indicated worlds under direct human protection, while yellow markers showed systems with human military advisors. The coverage was extensive and growing every day. What kind of dispute are we talking about? Trade routes and mining rights, mostly. But both sides are now equipped with human-designed weapons and trained by human instructors. If this escalates to actual fighting, it won't be the limited skirmishes they used to have. The communication console chimed with an incoming priority. Message. General Stone read the report twice before fully understanding its implications. Captain Steve Rogers, commanding human forces in the Outer Rim, was reporting unauthorized expansion by alien forces under human command. The message was brief but alarming. General, the Vorthic Second Fleet has occupied 3 neutral systems in the past week. When I questioned their commander, he said they were securing the systems for their own protection. They're using human tactics and human weapons, but they're not following human orders anymore. Patricia felt a chill run down her spine. The galaxy had called for help against the Devourers, and humanity had answered that call. But in teaching other species how to fight, they had also taught them how to conquer. The peaceful civilizations that had once limited themselves to defensive wars were now equipped and trained for aggressive expansion. She activated the secure communication channel to Earth and requested an immediate conference with the President. And Admiral Kane, the war against the Devourers was over, but Patricia suspected that a new and more dangerous conflict was about to begin. The species that had begged for human protection were no longer content to simply survive. They had learned from humanity's example that military strength could solve any problem, and they were eager to put that lesson into practice. The galaxy had been saved from one existential threat, but the cure might prove worse than the disease. As Patricia prepared her report, she wondered if humanity had made a terrible mistake. They had come to this galaxy as saviors, but they might have turned it into something far more dangerous than the Devourers had ever been. Admiral Lisa Kane sat in her office aboard the Defiance, reading intelligence reports that made her stomach turn. 3 years had passed since the destruction of the Devourer Command Nexus, and the galaxy was celebrating humanity as the greatest heroes in recorded history. Parades were held on hundreds of worlds. Human advisors sat in every major government, and statues of human soldiers stood in the centers of alien cities. But the reports crossing Lisa's desk told a different story. Admiral, Captain Steve Rogers is requesting permission to intervene in the Altair system, announced her aide, Commander Julie Foster. The local government has collapsed, and human colonists are requesting protection. Lisa looked up from the report she had been reading about unauthorized human settlements in former Devourer territory. What kind of colonists, and who authorized their presence in that system? That's the problem, ma'am. No one authorized them. They're former military personnel who decided to stay after the war ended. According to Rogers, they've established farming communities on 3 different planets and are now asking for official Earth protection. This was the pattern that worried Lisa most. Human soldiers who had fought in the war were not returning home. Instead, they were claiming territory in liberated systems and establishing permanent settlements. What had started as a military intervention was becoming a colonial expansion, and Earth's government seemed powerless to stop it. Director Paul Martin of Earth Intelligence had been tracking these developments for months, and his latest report was the most disturbing yet. He stood before the Defense Council in Geneva, displaying holographic maps that showed human influence spreading across the galaxy like a virus. Gentlemen, we have a serious problem, Paul began. Our military commanders in the field are no longer taking orders from Earth. They're making independent decisions about territorial control, resource allocation, and military deployment. We're losing control of our own forces. Secretary of Defense Robert Hayes leaned forward in his chair. What kind of independent decisions are we talking about? General Stone has established permanent military bases on 17 worlds without authorization from Earth Command. Captain Turner is training alien species in advanced warfare techniques that we specifically classified as restricted technology. And Colonel Mitchell has been accepting offers of citizenship and government positions from multiple alien civilizations. The holographic display shifted to show economic data that was equally troubling. Human military contractors were selling weapons and training services to dozens of species, creating a galactic arms market that had never existed before. Peace-loving civilizations were building war fleets, while aggressive species were developing weapons that could threaten entire star systems. The Centauri have gone from having no military at all to maintaining the largest space fleet in their sector, Paul continued. The Calthic are using human-designed weapons to settle territorial disputes that they used to resolve through negotiation. And the Nexari have started manufacturing combat drones based on human infantry tactics. President Martinez listened to the briefing with growing alarm. Are you telling me that our intervention has militarized the entire galaxy? That's exactly what I'm telling you, sir. Species that had not fought a war in thousands of years are now equipped and trained for aggressive expansion. And they're using human military doctrine to justify their actions. The situation was becoming clear to everyone in the room. Humanity had not just saved the galaxy from the Devourers. They had fundamentally changed how alien civilizations approached conflict. The concept of defensive warfare had been replaced by human ideas about preemptive strikes, territorial control, and military supremacy. Captain Derek Johnson commanded the largest human settlement in former Devourer space, a thriving colony on what had once been a lifeless world in the Vega system. 10,000 humans now called the planet New Austin home, and they had no intention of returning to Earth's authority. We built this place with our own hands, Derek told the Earth delegation. That had come to negotiate their return. We fought and died to liberate this system from the Devourers. Why should we abandon it now, just because some politicians on a planet 40,000 light-years away think they still own us? The delegation leader, Ambassador Karen Lewis, tried to maintain diplomatic protocol despite her frustration. Captain Johnson, you and your people are still citizens of Earth. Your military service was supposed to be temporary. Was it? Derek laughed and gestured toward the window, where construction crews were building the foundations of a new city. Look around you, Ambassador. This isn't a temporary military base anymore. It's a home. My daughter was born here. My wife runs the agricultural program, and my neighbors are families who decided they liked this galaxy better than the one they left behind. Derek's colony was not unique. Similar settlements had appeared throughout the region, established by human military personnel who had decided to stay after the war. Each colony claimed to be independent from Earth authority, but they maintained close ties with human military forces and continued to receive supplies and reinforcements from other human settlements. Dr. Sandra Lewis had been studying the cultural changes taking place across the galaxy, and her findings were deeply troubling. The peaceful philosophies that had dominated alien civilizations for millennia were being replaced by human concepts of competitive survival and military strength. Torani used to resolve conflicts through meditation and consensus building, Sandra reported to the Xenocultural Studies Committee. Now they have a standing army of 50,000 soldiers trained in human assault tactics. When I asked their council why they needed such a force, they said it was for protection against threats that might emerge. What kind of threats? Asked Dr. Gary Coleman, the committee chairman. That's just it. There are no threats. The Devourers are gone. Piracy in their sector has actually decreased, and their neighbors are all peaceful species. But they've been convinced by human military advisors that threats could emerge at any time, so they need to be prepared for anything. Sandra's research showed similar patterns throughout the galaxy. Species were building military forces not because they faced immediate dangers, but because humans had taught them that military preparedness was essential for survival. The concept of peace through strength had replaced peace through cooperation as the dominant political philosophy. General Victor Hayes commanded what had become known as the New Order, a coalition of human and alien military forces that operated independently of any government authority. His headquarters occupied an entire moon in the Proxima Centauri system, and his forces included ships and personnel from 12 different species. "We saved this galaxy from extinction," Victor told the reporter from Earth News Network. "The old Galactic Council couldn't protect anyone from the Devourers, but we did. Now they want us to pretend that threat is gone forever and go back to their failed policies of passive resistance." The interview was being broadcast across the galaxy, and Victor knew that millions of beings were watching. The universe is a dangerous place. The Devourers were just one threat among many. Our job is to make sure that no civilization ever faces extinction again, whether the politicians like it or not. Victor's New Order controlled military forces in 23 star systems and had defense agreements with 47 different worlds. They operated their own intelligence networks, maintained their own supply chains, and made their own decisions about when and where to deploy their forces. When the Earth delegation demanded that Victor return his forces to Earth Authority, he simply laughed. "Earth Authority? You mean the same authority that wanted to ignore the Devourer crisis? The same authority that thought the galaxy could be saved with diplomacy and good intentions?" The delegation leader, General Patricia Stone, felt a chill as she recognized the contempt in Victor's voice. She had seen that same expression on the faces of human commanders throughout the galaxy. They no longer saw Earth as their home, or their government as their authority. They saw themselves as the galaxy's protectors, accountable to no one but their own judgment. "Victor, you're talking about abandoning everything humanity stands for," Patricia said. "Democracy, civilian oversight, international law." "I'm talking about survival," Victor replied. "The galaxy learned that lesson when the Devourers came. The only law that matters is the law of strength, and strength comes from military power. Earth can keep its democracy. Out here, we have more important things to worry about." Commander Troy Bennett led a peacekeeping mission to the Outer Rim, where reports suggested that human-trained alien forces were expanding into neutral territory. What he found was worse than the intelligence reports had indicated. The Vorthik Third Fleet had occupied 6 star systems in the past month, claiming that they were establishing security zones to protect against potential threats. The local populations had not requested protection, and several had actively resisted the occupation. "Commander Bennett, we are following standard human military doctrine," explained Fleet Admiral Zethkar when Troy questioned the occupations. "You taught U.S. that the best defense is to control territory before enemies can use it against you." 5 years after the first desperate transmission reached Earth, Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stood in the same Galactic Council chambers where the plea for help had originated. But this time, she was not there as humanity's representative seeking to offer aid. She was there as the defendant in a war crimes tribunal, facing charges that could result in the complete isolation of humanity from galactic civilization. The chamber was packed with representatives from hundreds of species, many of whom owed their survival to human intervention during the Devourer War. But gratitude had turned to fear, and fear had turned to anger as the consequences of human involvement became clear. Chief Prosecutor Vextal of the Kelthic stood before the assembled delegates, his massive frame imposing even by the standards of his warrior species. "Honored representatives, we gather today to address the greatest threat our galaxy has ever faced. Not the Devourers, who consumed worlds for survival, but the humans, who consume civilizations for ideology." Elena felt the weight of hundreds of alien eyes upon her as Vextal continued his opening statement. "The charges are extensive. Unauthorized territorial expansion across 43 star systems, military occupation of 67 neutral worlds, violation of galactic sovereignty laws on an unprecedented scale, and the systematic militarization of previously peaceful species. The evidence was presented through holographic displays that showed the spread of human influence across the galaxy. Red zones marked direct human control, yellow areas indicated human military advisors, and orange regions showed alien forces trained by human instructors. The coverage was staggering, reaching into every sector of known space. When the Devourers threatened our existence, we welcomed human assistance, testified Elder Nymira of the Nexari. But we asked for protection, not conquest. We asked for help in defending our homes, not instruction in how to destroy others. Captain Derek Johnson had refused to attend the tribunal, sending a recorded message instead from his colony world in the Vega system. His face appeared on the main display, showing none of the diplomatic courtesy that the situation demanded. "You called us savages when we arrived," Eric said, his voice echoing through the silent chamber. "You said our kinetic weapons were primitive and our military thinking was crude. But when the Devourers came, those same primitive weapons saved your lives. Now you complain that we stayed to make sure it never happens again." The recording continued as Derek gestured toward something off camera. "This galaxy was dying when we found it. Your peaceful civilizations were being consumed one by one, and your advanced energy weapons were useless against an enemy designed to absorb them. We didn't just save you from the Devourers. We saved you from your own weakness." Ambassador Keffler, who had sent the original plea for help, stood to address the tribunal. His blue scales had regained their luster, and his forearms no longer shook with exhaustion. But his voice carried a sadness that had not been there during the dark days of the war. "I sent that transmission because my people were dying," Keffler said. "Billions of lives hung in the balance, and we were desperate for any help we could find. The humans answered our call and saved us from extinction. For that, we owe them a debt that can never be repaid." He paused and looked directly at Elena. "But we asked for salvation, not subjugation. We asked for help in our darkest hour, not instruction in how to create darkness for others. The humans who came to our aid were heroes. The humans who remain to reshape our galaxy are something else entirely." General Victor Hayes had also refused to attend, but his influence was felt throughout the proceedings. The new order, his coalition of human and alien military forces, now controlled the largest armed fleet in galactic history. Most disturbing was the fact that many of the alien delegates attending the tribunal commanded forces trained by Hayes and his subordinates. The old Galactic Council failed, came Hayes' recorded response when asked to justify his actions. They had no answer for the Devourers except to die slowly and hope someone else would save them. We provided that salvation, and now we provide the strength to ensure it never happens again. Hayes' image looked directly into the camera with the confidence of someone who controlled vast military resources. You can hold all the tribunals you want and pass all the resolutions you like. But when the next existential threat emerges, you'll come begging to us again. And we'll be ready, because someone has to be. Dr. Michelle Clark had spent 2 years documenting the transformation of galactic civilization, and her testimony provided the most damning evidence against humanity. Her research showed how human influence had spread far beyond simple military assistance. The concept of aggressive expansion was unknown to most galactic species before human contact, Michelle testified. The Zantari had not fought an offensive war in over 3,000 years. The Tarani had never conquered territory outside their home system. The Nexari viewed military force as a last resort to be used only in immediate self-defense. Her holographic display showed cultural data from before and after human intervention. Within 3 years of learning human military doctrine, all 3 species had established expansionist policies. The Centauri now control 12 systems beyond their original territory. The Terrani have occupied 6 worlds that never requested their protection. And the Nexari have created the largest drone army in their sector's history. Michelle's voice grew heavy with the weight of her findings. Humanity didn't just teach these species how to fight the Devourers. They taught them how to think like humans. The concept of peace through strength replaced peace through cooperation. Military solutions became preferable to diplomatic ones, and territorial expansion became a form of defense. The most shocking testimony came from Commander Troy Bennett, who had witnessed the transformation firsthand during his peacekeeping missions. The species that called for our help no longer exist, he told the tribunal. Not because they were destroyed, but because they were changed into something unrecognizable. Troy activated a holographic display showing occupied worlds throughout the galaxy. The Vorthek who sent the original distress call were a peaceful trading civilization. The Vorthek who now occupy 17 star systems are a military power that sees conquest as a form of protection. We didn't save their civilization. We replaced it with our own. The evidence continued for days, but the pattern was consistent. Every species that had received human military assistance had been fundamentally altered by the experience. Their political systems had become militarized, their foreign policies had become aggressive, and their cultural values had shifted toward competition and strength. Helena knew that her defense was hopeless before she began speaking. The evidence was overwhelming, and the anger in the chamber was palpable. But she had to try to explain how humanity's best intentions had led to such devastating consequences. Representatives of the Galactic Council, Elena began, humanity, came to this galaxy because we heard a cry for help. We brought our weapons and our soldiers because that's what you asked for. We taught you our military doctrines because that's what was needed to defeat the Devourers. She gestured toward the displays showing human influence across the galaxy. But we also brought something else, something we didn't realize would be so dangerous. We brought our way of thinking about survival and conflict. We brought the idea that military strength is the ultimate guarantee of safety. Elena's voice grew quieter as she continued. On Earth, we have institutions and traditions that constrain military power. We have civilian oversight, international law, and cultural values that limit how force can be used. But when we taught you our tactics, we didn't teach you our limitations. We gave you the sword without the sheath. The chamber remained silent as Elena delivered her conclusion. You asked who would save the galaxy from us. The truth is, no one can, because we've already won. Not through conquest, but through conversion. You've become us. Every military decision you make, every territorial expansion you justify, every preemptive strike you launch, you do it using human logic and human reasoning. The tribunal's verdict was unanimous. Humanity was found guilty of crimes against galactic civilization. But the sentence was meaningless because the damage was already done. The peaceful species that had called for help were gone, replaced by military powers that had learned their lessons too well. Captain Jake Morrison, now an old man, stood on the observation deck of his ship and recorded a final message to Earth. The New Horizon had been exploring the galaxy for decades, and he had seen the transformation with his own eyes. We answered their call for help, Jake said, looking out at space that was now patrolled by fleets from dozens of species. We saved them from the Devourers and taught them how to defend themselves. But in teaching them to fight like us, we made them into us. He paused as a squadron of Vorthik warships passed by, their hulls bristling with human-designed weapons. The galaxy's desperate plea for help has been answered, but the greatest threat landed without warning, and it wore a human face. We didn't conquer this galaxy through force. We conquered it through example. Jake's final words were broadcast across the galaxy, reaching human colonies and alien worlds alike.